Hey everyone, and happy holidays, and welcome back to the latest max velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be talking about a storm that is growing in size that is about to take a strange turn. This storm has been causing a lot of problems already, including lots of snowfall, blizzard conditions across parts of the United States, and that is going to ramp up over the next 24 to 48 hours. And additionally, we have a very strong cold front on the backside of this that is also going to bring colder weather, a little bit of isolated severe weather, and as well as a lot of rainfall to much of the United States. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin with what's happening right now in the United States. And we're going to begin with the storm itself. It's obviously very large, and it spans all the way from the Gulf of Mexico and Florida back into parts of the northern plains and the Midwest. And again, this storm has been very active over the last 24 hours. It continues to grow, and the low pressure center is actually now moving more to the north and northwest, and it's about to take a strange turn. As I just mentioned, it's actually going to be taking a westerly track over the next 24 hours, believe it or not, which is not very typical for low pressure systems. And this low pressure system will essentially be doing a little circle back into parts of the northern plains and the central plains, and it's going to really dump a lot of snow to areas like Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, and North Dakota. And we're also going to see an ice storm out of this. So again, there's a lot of components to this storm that we'll be breaking down for you in this forecast, so make sure you stay tuned. Further down to the south and east, though, it's not really nearly as much of snow. We're actually talking more about really heavy rainfall that'll lead to some isolated flooding on Christmas Day. Notice right now there is some heavy rainfall ongoing across parts of the Ohio Valley back into Florida. There's also some lighter rainfall across parts of Florida as well, kind of a mix of light to moderate rainfall there. Not really looking at much severe weather here, but we might see an isolated severe storm or two between now and tomorrow afternoon near South Carolina, Georgia, and maybe Florida, but I'm not anticipating any widespread severe weather event out of this particular system. But it's definitely going to be something to watch for. If you have any outdoor plans, make sure you're taking the proper precautions and have multiple ways to receive alerts just in case anything does end up happening. Now this afternoon for Christmas Day, temperatures are going to vary a lot across the United States. Notice this is where your cold frontal boundary is, and it extends all the way back down into areas like Louisiana and Texas. Notice areas like Florida, high temperatures in the mid to upper 70s in some spots. The Panhandle a little bit cooler in the mid 60s. But again, notice all that warmer air, strong southerly winds, pulling moisture and warmer air across much of the Ohio Valley. One of the warmer Christmas days that we've had in quite some time across areas like Ohio and Michigan in the 50s and 60s. That's just unheard of for this time of the year in these areas. So much warmer than average temperatures there, and then much colder weather where the blizzard conditions are expected today, and that would include areas in the central and northern plains with high temperatures only getting into the 20s in some spots, which is actually a little bit more normal for this time of the year. In terms of the watches and warnings across the United States, you might notice really one area in particular that has the majority of the watches and warnings, and that is the northern and central plains, where we have blizzard warnings in effect from Colorado back into South Dakota. Those red boxes indicating your blizzard warnings. That's where wind gusts will be between 30 to 45 miles per hour. That'll cause blowing snow, and that'll obviously lead to the blizzard conditions that we're expecting both today and tomorrow. And additionally, upwards of 1 to 2 feet of snow is possible in those areas. We have ice storm warnings in effect for parts of northeast South Dakota and as well as eastern North Dakota. Winter weather advisories in effect back through Minnesota and as well as into Kansas. And though this area does not include areas like Kansas City and even the northern parts of Oklahoma, I would not rule out some isolated flurries and maybe even a little bit of limited accumulation in these areas that are not included in the watches or warnings. There might be a little bit of snowfall there between now and tomorrow, but I don't really anticipate a white Christmas in those areas. You need at least 1 inch of snow accumulation for that to happen. All right, let's talk more about what's going to be happening with this snowstorm and obviously the blizzard that's going to be coming out of this, and as well as what's happening over the next 7 days. So obviously this is what the storm looks like this morning. We do have a pretty defined low pressure system across Iowa, and then this is again where all the snow is. Cold air advection is going to be plowing in to many areas across the Great Plains over the next 24 hours, with the warmer advection all back on the eastern side of this low pressure system as keeping the rain and also the storm activity off to the east. Now as we go into tonight, that blizzard is going to really ramp up, and also we're going to be watching for freezing rain across areas like northern Minnesota back into the Dakotas, and I'm going to be showing you more specific details on this here in just a second with the snowfall accumulation and the ice accumulation. But as we go into tomorrow, this storm continues, but it's going to weaken a little bit. And what's going to be very interesting to watch for is that, again, this low pressure system is going to spin around a little bit, and it's going to kind of center itself again back over near Iowa as we go into tomorrow. But this is going to actually weaken a little bit. A lot of cold air advection here, and that's going to lead to colder weather, but not nearly as heavy of precipitation. Once we go into Wednesday morning, this activity primarily will shift to the east, but we will still have some snow around this low pressure system, which will happen across areas like Missouri and Illinois. I don't anticipate this to be very heavy. It'll be very light, and I don't think it's going to accumulate into much as we go into Wednesday. By the time we get closer to Thursday, this will be a little bit more interesting. We might actually get a little bit of isolated wintry precipitation in Tennessee and Kentucky, but it's going to be a very close call, maybe even into northern Georgia. If this low pressure system does go this far out of the south, cold air advection will leak into areas like South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and that could lead to some very isolated but light wintry precipitation in those areas. So that'll be something to watch for in the long term, but obviously right now we're more focused on that blizzard that's going to be occurring in parts of the central and northern plains. And notice the wind gusts as we go into tonight. They'll be really high. I mean, we're talking 30 to 45 miles per hour, peaking near 50 miles per hour in some spots. So it's going to be high wind gusts. Make sure, again, if you're anywhere in the central and northern plains, that you're taking the proper precautions now, protecting pipes, plants, pets, all that sort of stuff, and obviously make sure you hatch down those trampolines. All right, let's talk more about the timing, beginning with the central plains. This is an area that we're not really talking about a lot of snow, but it will happen in some areas, and it's actually going to be very light, but we will see some snow in a lot of areas that might not even think you're going to actually see snow. So this is going into tonight. Again, notice mostly light snow across areas like central Kansas, and then the heaviest of the snow will be back up in Nebraska and as well South Dakota. We'll talk about more on that here in just a second. Going to the overnight hours, we might even see some flurries near Kansas City, and that could actually go into parts of northern Oklahoma as we go into tomorrow afternoon. Cold air advection again, really dominant across this area, and that'll lead to some isolated snow flurries. We could even see this go as far south as areas in Oklahoma, and that would include areas even in northwest Oklahoma. So keep a close eye on that. Once we go into tomorrow evening into the overnight hours, that snow starts to move off to the east. We might even see an isolated flurry back into parts of southern Oklahoma as we go into Wednesday morning. So keep a close eye on that as we go into that time frame, but I'm not anticipating a ton of snow by any means. It'll be very light, just some flurries overall. Back over into the northern plains, much different story. Notice this is all of the freezing rain extending from South Dakota back into Minnesota. That's going to definitely be something to watch for, because we will see ice accumulation upwards of a half an inch in some spots. Once we go to tomorrow morning, we'll be watching for heavy snowfall across much of South Dakota and back into Nebraska. Once we go into tomorrow afternoon, though, most of the snowfall will become very light. Still a little bit of freezing rain back into South Dakota and North Dakota, but overall it'll start to kind of diminish. Once we go into Wednesday morning, that is when most of this snowfall will definitely diminish by that point. Very light snow would be all that's left by then. Snowfall totals, well, we're not going to be looking at really much across much of the central plains. Notice again, we might get lucky with the coating to maybe a half an inch in parts of Iowa and Missouri. It will not be much. Back into parts of northern Kansas, a little bit more, around maybe 3 to 6 inches for the highest snowfall totals. Most of that will fall in northwest Kansas. But again, look back further up to the north. This is where we'll be looking at a lot more snowfall. We will likely see between 1 to 2 feet of snow back into South Dakota. So definitely a lot of snowfall there. And then in terms of ice accumulation, there will be a bunch, especially across southeast South Dakota. Very minimal amounts across parts of western Minnesota, but it'll be enough to make it slick on the roadways. This could cause easily some widespread power outages if we do end up seeing a half an inch of ice accumulation across parts of southeast North Dakota. So make sure you have at least some flashlights on hand, because power outages are definitely possible there. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.